I'm Joanna Simpson here at Quant International in London. Joining me now is Jukka Vesala, Head of Group Credit Risk Control at Nordea. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
And inflation and interest rates are high on the agenda. What do you make of the current central bank activities to curb inflation?
Yeah, I think central banks have been doing a good job in curbing inflation. I think we see now pretty good results, especially in the US, where the inflation is coming down. We just had the latest data coming out yesterday. And then also the same in the UK, where inflation is still pretty high, but it's coming down, I think. And the same also for Europe and the euro area. But I think the problem has been that this inflationary period that started after a really long period of no inflation, low interest rates, that caught everybody, also central banks, by surprise. That was not predicted, because that was because of the extraordinary impacts of the war in Russia, the energy crisis, many things that cannot be predicted. And then central banks had to act really fast and increase interest rates. And the job has been also made difficult by, I think, the situation where many governments are spending more. So then, in a way, central banks are tightening and governments are loosening. So that is sort of mixing the policy. But I think we are seeing a sort of positive result of those actions now.
And would you share some of the insights from your panel here at Quant International? And what's the outlook for 2024?
Yeah, I mean, one key takeaway from the panel was that inflation is especially difficult to forecast. We discussed a lot about what can the quant profession help, how we can make progress using AI, big data, how we can improve forecasting, which is always very difficult because of the possibility of the tail events like geopolitical events or whatnot. So it's really difficult to predict, and nobody has a crystal ball. And interestingly, also the derivative markets is developing. We are starting to have hedging products against inflation, like inflation swaps, that tell what is the market expectation of inflation. So I think now the basic forecast is that inflation will be coming down still, and the central banks might start loosening a bit monetary policy. But I don't think that will be fast. I think the interest rates will stay pretty much as they are. That's my central projection for next year. But I mean, it is a very difficult subject, and I think the main takeaway from the panel is that we need to get used to a much more, let's say, risky and volatile environment. We need to get used to inflation that's not going to be zero anymore, at least in the foreseeable future. So I think the key thing is to understand that it's very hard to predict, and you have to be prepared for, let's say, the worst outcomes.
And after the banking failures in early 2023, people have been braced for more bad news. Is that likely to be pushed back to 2024 now?
Yeah, I think the sort of the banking failures that we had, like the mid-sized US banks like SVB, then we had Credit Suisse big failure in Europe. I think those were because of very vulnerable business model, not really understanding the interest rate risk that you have. And the Credit Suisse had also some specific problems with investments like chaos. So those have been, I think, due to the business model and not doing, I would say, pretty basic risk management. And then also, I think we can say that in the US, the supervisors were not as closely supervising the smaller banks. So much focus was on the bigger banks, and has been. So if we compare to Europe, where supervision is much tighter also for smaller banks. But I think the key thing to sort of be stable going forward is that banks need to be profitable. They need to have stable business models, maybe a little bit going back to simple basic banking, so which sort of creates predictable earnings. So I think we are fine in Europe with that approach.
And are you anticipating some positive developments on the horizon in 2024?
I think we might see some positive news from the economy. I mean, it is still that if we look at Europe, there is still the sort of I would say I would expect that the economies will soften a bit. There might be even a short recession somewhere in Europe, but I think it might be short-lived that we will have a soft landing. And certainly, U.S. looks better now. That the economy looks to be surviving well this period of higher interest rates. So I'm pretty positive on the economy. But let's see. I mean, nobody knows if there's a conflict with China or something. I mean, it can be changed. But I think we look ahead a pretty, let's say, at least I'm not so concerned anymore about the economic development going forward.
Jukka Vesala, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.